If I could summarize the state of the world over the last year with one word, that word would be fear. We're told not to have the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. So how do we go through life and experience the challenges and the trials, the discomforts, the disappointments, the pain?
Like sometimes we don't understand why we have certain trials until later, then it's like all clear.
When it seems like our world is falling apart all around us, when it seems like my life is falling apart, when I'm suffering, when I'm hurting, when I'm in pain, when things aren't going the way that I want them to go, how do I express faith?
In the future life, the mysteries that here have annoyed and disappointed us will be made plain. We shall see that our seemingly unanswered prayers and disappointed hopes have been among our greatest blessings. I have like a trial that has been just huge in my life for years, and that's my health.
A year ago, my wife was very, very ill. She was very sick.
1 year ago, right now, I was about 79 pounds and could hardly eat anything.
She weighed 79 pounds, and we shared a little bit about her health journey and how she started on the road to recovery.
And I discovered I had, gotten myself into that condition by restricting my diet in certain areas, and it's called orthorexia, where you try to be so healthy that it actually affects your health.
So it was really exciting to see Lori start recovering and getting healthy after she had been so sick last year about this time, and then she was able to eat and she started having an appetite, and she was on the road to recovery. She was gaining weight. She was feeling a lot better. Her digestion was better.
And then I woke up one morning last September and I felt like I was relapsing because all of a sudden my food was just sitting there, and I felt like I was poisoned again, like, the old symptoms I used to have, and nausea.
And then all of a sudden, it seemed like all of her symptoms started coming back. And we were afraid that she was perhaps going into a relapse, but as it turns out, she was really just pregnant. And when we found out that Lori was pregnant, we just wondered, like, Lord, why are you allowing this to happen at this point in Earth's history?
It's really exciting, but at the same time, it brought back all the digestive issues that I had tried so hard to overcome.
You just got to go forward and trust in God that this is part of your plan, this is part of your will. And so Lori got pregnant and her symptoms started to come back. And we certainly felt like this pregnancy was definitely a good indication that she was on the road to recovery, because I don't think there was really any way that she would be able to get pregnant while she was 79 pounds, while she was so sick.
And so for the last 9 months, I've really struggled with just not ever having an appetite, just having to force myself to eat, just feeling like food is just sitting there, and just same thing I used to deal with. But I thankfully was able to gain some weight and have a healthy pregnancy.
We fast forward to the delivery of our newest child. We had a daughter, and we had a home birth, and the delivery went wonderful.
My mother and a few other people were able to be here, and it was just a wonderful, the best birth experience I've had. And little Heidi was born.
Lori was healthy, the baby was healthy, she weighed 9 pounds. We named her Heidi Michelle Dooley.
3 days later, in the night, I woke up and I had severe abdominal pain.
3 days later, it was a Sabbath morning, Lori woke up and she didn't hardly sleep that night. And when I saw her, she was shaking and she was very, very weak. like she couldn't even get out of bed, and she had a very, very high temperature.
I was miserable. I was shaking. I was in so much pain. I knew something was very wrong, but I didn't know what. And my mom came in for the morning, and she said, let's take your temperature. And
I was very, very concerned. Her color was drained. She was very pale.
throughout the day, it got up to 103.8. I talked to my best friend who's a doctor, and we called around seeing what could possibly be wrong.
We called her and some other people as well, some other doctors that we know. And the consensus was you have some sort of infection in the uterus.
She said it's probably endometritis, which is an infection in the uterus.
It's probably endometritis. And you really need to go to the hospital because this is something that's very serious.
I really don't like taking drugs. I haven't taken any drugs probably for about 8 years. I just don't feel like they cure anything, and I would rather do herbs and do natural. That's just the way I am. So I did not want to go get antibiotics if I could help it. Finally around noonish, we're just like, okay, maybe we need to go to the hospital. Let's do this. And so we packed up, we called the hospital, told them we're going to be there in 30 minutes.
So we started packing our bags and started getting everything ready to take her to the hospital Sabbath morning. And we had everything ready to go. We were just about to go out the door. Lori was still in bed, and she said something to me. She said, I really think I need to be anointed. I really want to be anointed. Before we make any decision, before we go anywhere, before we make any decision, I want to be anointed.
We decided together, like, let's have the elders come over and anoint me first before we go to the hospital or make any decisions. Now, it worked out perfectly because this was a Sabbath morning. All the elders, everybody was at church.
So I come over to the church, and I walk in, and they're in the middle of the church service, and DeMario has just stood up to preach, and he's live streaming. So I sat back, stood in the back for a little bit, and not really wanting to interrupt, but I felt like, well, okay, I need to do something. So I walk up to the front, and I just make an appeal and just let the church family know that we really need prayer, and we would really appreciate it if the elders would come and anoint her. Right then and there, DeMario stopped the church service immediately and said, all right, everybody, let's get on our knees and pray. And so I left the church. They all gathered together and stopped the church service and just got on their knees and prayed, and then they sang some songs. And almost immediately all of the elders piled into a van and came over and anointed Lori.
So Matt drove over to the church about 10 minutes away, interrupted the service, and had the elders come over. And so they came, and all of a sudden, like, I started feeling better. My temperature went down a little bit, and it's just like, well, maybe we're not supposed to go right now. So the elders prayed with me and anointed me, and I just can't even describe the perfect peace I had after they prayed with me.
And as they stood around the bed and anointed her, DeMario had said something that really, really stood out to me. He said, you know, I have this feeling in my heart that whatever is happening here, the Lord is testing you. And he didn't mean like testing you whether or not you're going to follow the natural remedies or go to the hospital. It's like somehow I feel like this is a test. And so I took that and said, okay, well, that's probably the case, but still, nevertheless, we don't know what to do. What is it that you want us to do? So we prayed, Lord, your will be done. Lori was feeling better, so we ended up deciding that we should stay home that Sabbath afternoon.
And I just really felt like I'm not supposed to go right now. You know, it's Sabbath. I'm actually too sick to go like, I don't feel like getting in the car and going. And, you know, I was just so tired. I just wanted to rest. And I just felt perfect peace that, you know, if there is something in my uterus, God can get it out. You know, He healed the sick so many times. I didn't feel like it was the right thing to do to go right then.
And she was able to get a nap. She was able to get some rest. She went to bed that night. And I started to worry. And I started to just have fear of my wife dying, really. Like, what am I going to do if my wife dies? What am I going to do? I'm going to have 2 children that are, you know, that are relatively grown up, and then a brand new baby that I'm going to have to take care of, and I would have nobody to help me take care of these children. And, you know, how am I going to provide for them and try to take care of them? I just don't see how that would be possible. So obviously I was really concerned, and just this overwhelming dread and fear came over me. And I remember going back that night. You know, I did some things, and I remember going to Lori before we went to bed, and just emotionally I was overwhelmed with the thought of losing my wife, and just in tears I just said, I don't want to lose you, and I don't know what I would do without you. So it was really a hard decision going to bed that night with this infection and with the fever and how sick she was, and worrying, is this infection going to go septic, and is she going to go into septic shock? And I went to bed that night wondering, like, am I going to wake up the next morning, and is my wife still going to be alive?
So the next morning, I was feeling a little better. My fever had gone down quite a bit, but I was still having, like, I started having severe abdominal pain on the right side. I felt bloated, and I could hardly move. It hurt so bad. So we started thinking, well, maybe we need to go somewhere today.
It was Mother's Day on Sunday when her fever started to go back up, and I just prayed and prayed, Lord, I need wisdom. I need your wisdom to know what decision we should make. And I don't even know where to take her. We don't have any insurance. So I did some research and looked at, you know, what are the options around in my area. And I came across a hospital that is about an hour away. So I asked him some questions and told him about the situation and what would happen if we brought her in. And she said, well, she would come in, and we would admit her directly to the OB ward. That was a plus. And then obviously going to a hospital at this time, you know, with COVID and everything, I wanted to know what their restrictions were as far as COVID. And again, they came back and they said to me that we're actually allowing up to 3 people because COVID is kind of lessening, it's going down, that we've relaxed our policies and you can have 3 people. Well, everywhere else I called, they would only allow us to have 1 visitor. And so it was very important that, you know, my wife and new baby Heidi could be there, and then myself and my mother-in-law be there as well. So that was definitely a plus. And then I looked at some of the doctors on the list of that hospital and who was, you know, the OB doctor. And there was one in particular, and I just looked and I felt like I can't explain it, but I felt like this is the one, this is the guy. And I didn't know anything about him. I read a couple reviews. They said he was kind and everything. And so I just felt in my heart like, okay, this is the guy. This is the OB doctor that I want. And so when I asked who was the OB doctor on call that day, it was the one. It was the same guy.
And then Matt did some research, and he found a place that he thought we should go. And so we all agreed, let's go. We better make sure there's nothing in my uterus.
I don't know. I think this is the right decision. we got to take her in. She needs to get at least checked out so that we know there's nothing inside the uterus that is causing an infection. So we need to get an ultrasound and rule that out and deal with the infection. And so I felt like, okay, let's go to this one. We're on our way, and of course we're praying all the way, and we don't know if we're making the right decision or making a mistake, but we're just praying, Lord, our life is in your hands. You know, everything we own, we know this can cost a lot of money. We leave it up to you. We leave it up to you. We trust that you're going to work all things out according to your will.
And when we got there, the OB doctor came in, and he didn't spend very long, but basically just poked at my belly, asked me a few questions, and then said,
Doctor comes in, and immediately he pushes on her stomach, and he thinks it's appendicitis.
I think maybe you have appendicitis. I'm going to send the surgeon in to talk to you. Now, in my head, I'm thinking, you've got to be kidding. You know, here I've had several doctors on the phone tell me I have endometritis. It's, you know, I just had a baby. I've got a uterine infection. Here he's going to send a surgeon in, and he ordered this CT scan for these things cost like $5,000, and we don't have insurance.
So he leaves the room, and Lori and I are just kind of looking at each other, and we say, well, she doesn't have appendicitis. I'm not a doctor. I know she doesn't have appendicitis. I mean, she just had a baby. And so I was kind of wondering, like, well, what is this guy doing? And so then he orders a CT scan and says he's going to send the surgeon in. Well, a CT scan, I mean, that's like a lot of money. And he tries to order all these tests and these blood tests. And so I'm sitting there in my mind, I'm thinking, oh my, you know, this is going to cost a lot of money, and then the CT scan is going to cost a lot of money, and I'm starting to worry and fear about that, if this is going to be like absolutely devastating to us financially.
And so we're sitting there thinking, okay, what about an ultrasound for my uterus? This is what the doctors on the phone had said that I had needed. But anyway, we didn't have much choice. We waited, and finally the surgeon comes in. And when he came in, I was sitting there holding Heidi like this, my new baby.
The first thing he did was he came and he knelt beside the bed. And you could just tell, like, in his voice, in his mannerisms, he looked at Lori, and he was just very, very kind.
He came in and he knelt down by the bed, and he said, there's two things I like about walking in here. Number one, you have a smile. Number two, you're holding your baby. And he said right away, like, you don't look like you have appendicitis. Because I was, at that point, I was feeling okay. I was smiling. And he was just the kindest man. It's really hard to put into words, but I just really felt like he cared about me. He didn't make me put my mask on, and he just really looked me in the eye and talked to me and asked me what the problem was. And you have to realize, like, I had a very bad idea of surgeons in my head. You know, used to work in nursing school and nursing with surgeons, and a lot of times they're not very kind. But this man was so kind. And he asked me, were you a high-risk pregnancy? And I said, I don't know, I wasn't. I did home birth, and we had a midwife, and didn't really have any complications. And he said, oh, I bet you homeschool and eat really healthy and go to church every week.
And he says, and you look healthy. You do everything right, don't you? You eat right. You're very healthy, aren't you? And Lori said, yes. And then he says, well, and you probably homeschool your children. And you go to church every week.
We laughed. We're like, yeah, that's pretty much it. And when he left the room, he said, well, I'm going to go find some sick people to treat. But he was so kind. Then we ended up having the CT scan that night, and it got so late that we didn't end up having the ultrasound that night. And honestly, I went to bed pretty frustrated. I was thinking, I know the Lord brought us here. It's clear He brought us here. But this OB doctor we thought was going to be so good only spent a couple minutes with me, and it's like he thinks I have appendicitis, and he's not really addressing the problem. He's not giving me an ultrasound, and I'm just sitting here when I wish I was at home where at least, I have hot and cold. It can be more comfortable. So the next morning, the surgeon came in and he shared with me that the CT scan had showed that, as we all thought, I didn't have appendicitis. However, it said that I had a 9.4 centimeter cyst on my ovary called a teratoma cyst.
Lori had a cyst, and it was 9.4 centimeters.
Just to give you an idea, like this orange is slightly smaller than 9.4 centimeters. So I have an extra thing like this right here on my, pushing up against my liver and gallbladder.
That's quite a big thing that was pushing up against her liver and her gallbladder and causing her some pains and everything.
Which she said is probably causing a lot of my pain and a lot of my issues in pregnancy and a lot of my digestion issues. And so he said I would definitely want to get that out at some point.
She has an ultrasound, finds out there's nothing in her uterus.
And it actually showed nothing. Like there was nothing in my uterus. And, it didn't rule out that there could be an infection in there, but at least there was no placenta. And it also did not show, the cyst didn't show up because my colon was in the way and everything. So I really needed that CT scan to show the cyst. So just sitting there that day, I started realizing, wow, like God really was working things out, even though I didn't really like this OB doctor too much because he didn't really ask me, what I thought, or he just kind of told me what he was going to do and left. But that's really what I needed. I needed this CT scan and I didn't know it.
I was outside, I was really tired. I was outside and I took a little nap in the car. As I was coming back in, I met the doctor, the surgeon. And he stopped me and he said, I've been thinking about your wife's that cyst on your wife's ovary, and I really think that's causing her a lot of the pain. And that cyst is pushing up against her liver and her gallbladder, and I think that's what's causing a lot of pain. And I told him, well, I think we want to have it taken out. We would like to eventually do the surgery. And at that point, because of our interaction with him, we just felt like the Lord was leading us to this specific surgeon. So I asked him, if that's something that he would be willing to do, if he could do that. And he said, yes, well, that's what I do. And I said, okay, well, I think we want to have you take it out. And he said to me, I know you guys don't have insurance. I know you're self-pay. So I've actually waived my fees for you. And he said, when you want to have the surgery, my office is right over there. Come see me and we'll work something out. We'll work something out for you guys. And as he was walking away, he turned around and he said, tell Lori that we love her. And when he said that, I really felt like he meant it. And I was walking back, and I had never really had an interaction with this man before. I didn't know who he is, but I walked away, and I had a distinct impression in my mind that this man is a Christian. He's a real Christian. I could sense the love and the care he had for me and my wife. And I think it was at that point that I knew this is right where God wanted us to be.
After Matt met the surgeon in the hall and they spoke, and Matt came in and shared what he had said, I just couldn't stop crying. I was just in awe of how God had led in my life, how he had allowed me to get pregnant and go through all these health, these trials, and how he had allowed this uterine infection. And if I hadn't gone in and gotten this CT scan, had this doctor that thought I had appendicitis, I never would have known.
So that the way that the Lord has led her to get pregnant and then to have this infection and then lead us to this hospital and these doctors, and that they ordered this skin to find this thing that has probably been causing a lot of health issues throughout, who knows how many years. To look back on that, it just blows my mind how good God is.
I think we all have trials that we go through that we can't explain. And when we're going through them, it's like, why is this happening, Lord? I don't understand. But this has helped me realize, like, God really is working out all the details. And someday we'll be able to look back on these things and see, okay, God, that's what you were doing. And that's why you had to do that. And yes, it hurt and it was painful going through that, but now I understand. And some of these things we will figure out before heaven, but some of them we won't know until we get to heaven. And Jesus will sit down with us and be able to explain everything. And so right now, this has strengthened my faith and helped me to let go of more of the day-to-day things in my life that come up and say, okay, God, I give this to you, it's yours. And so I just encourage you, whatever trial you're having, just trust in the Lord and ask Him to help you to have the faith that you need to get through it.
It's definitely been a faith-building experience for us. And so I just want to encourage you that if something is happening in your life, if you're experiencing some sort of pain or problem or trial or tribulation that you don't understand why it's happening to you, you don't understand why the Lord is allowing this to happen, I just want to encourage you to just have faith. Trust that all things truly do work together for good to those that love God and who are called according to His purpose. That in the end, you will look back and you will see that God's will is perfect and that you wouldn't have it any other way. What did you do while, can you tell me about Mommy's having the baby?
I just sat around and just watched.
Are you excited
Yeah.
about your baby sister?
Yeah, I'm
What are all
really
the things
excited.
you're going to do with your baby sister?
I'm going to play with her and I don't know, hopefully she'll like Legos.
Do you like playing or holding your sister?
Yeah, I like holding her a lot. Hannah does too.
What do you look forward to doing with her when she gets bigger?
Playing dolls with her.
You want to play dolls with her?
Yeah, and Legos and find turtles and with her and yeah, play with our frogs with her. Yeah, that's what I want to do.